The tea that changed everything. The sky was painted in soft grays that morning, the kind of dull color that makes the world feel quieter, like it's holding its breath for something big to happen. Mumbai's streets buzzed with their usual dance of honking rickshaws, impatient bikes, and that unmistakable mix of street spices and monsoon rain clinging to the air. Inside a modest little café tucked between two cracked buildings near a bus stop, a young woman named Aarohi wiped down table number 4 for the 5th time, not because it was dirty, because she needed anything to focus on besides the ache in her chest. At 24, Aarohi had dreams so big they scared her. She had studied software engineering at a government college. Top of her class, driven, curious, hopeful, but dreams she'd learned didn't always pay rent, especially not when your father's lungs gave out from years in a textile factory and you're younger. Brother needed school books more than you needed sleep. So she took the cafe job, serving chai and masala dosas to grumpy office workers and the occasional lonely tourist with a sunburn and no idea how to use a spice level chart. She wasn't bitter, not really. But some mornings like this one, what ifs clung to her like humidity. At 8:03 a.m., he walked in. She almost didn't look up, too busy drying a chipped mug with a dish towel that smelled like onions and lemon. Something about the man caught her attention. Not his clothes, they were simple. Not his face, though kind. It was the way he looked around. Remembering something he hadn't seen in a long time, like he'd been here before, but everything had changed. And yet he smiled. He sat at table 4, the one she had scrubbed obsessively. Fate's funny like that. Chai, please, he said softly. With a gentle nod, his Hindi had a hint of something else, like it had once belonged to someone who now lived too far from home. She smiled politely, brought the tea, and turned to walk away. But then he asked, "You ever wanted to do something else?" Aarohi blinked. "Pardon?" He smiled, sipping his tea. "You have the eyes of someone who builds things, not just carries plates." For a moment she thought he was mocking her. Rich men sometimes did that, played with words like they didn't cut. But his tone had no sharp edges, only warmth. Something about it reached into the ache she carried and gave it room to breathe. "I studied computers," she said, cautious. "I code or ... I did." He nodded slowly. "Still do. You just don't get paid for it yet." She laughed, surprised at her own voice. She hadn't smiled at a customer in weeks. Something about him was different. She didn't know his name, didn't know he was Sundar Pichai, the CEO of the world's biggest tech company. To her, he was just a kind man with tired eyes and tea-stained lips. They talked for 11 minutes. She told him about her favorite language, Python. He told her about how he once failed at learning C++. She didn't believe him at first, then laughed again when he described how his code once crashed his college's whole server. She didn't even notice the manager glaring from behind the counter. But Mr. Bhandari, did Bhandar, had owned the cafe for 15 years, and in that time, he'd developed a sixth sense for danger. He saw everything in transactions. Talk too long with a customer, and you're wasting time. Smile too wide, and you're probably angling for a tip he thinks you'll pocket. His motto was simple: serve fast, say little, smile once. So when he saw Aarohi laughing, actually laughing, with a man who looked like he hadn't even ordered food, he stormed over. "Aarohi," he snapped, loud enough for the few morning patrons to glance up. "What is this? Flirting. Customer service. Not cinema." Sundar looked up, confused. Aarohi opened her mouth to explain, but Bhandari raised a hand. "Enough. Take off your apron. You're done." There was a silence so sharp it almost cut. Her breath caught in her throat. "Sir, please." "I wasn't," I said, done. "You want to impress rich men? Do it somewhere else." She stared at him, heart thudding, the kind of thud that comes not from surprise, but from the slow collapse of everything you've been trying to hold up for too long. Sundar stood up, calmly, respectfully. "Sir." If I may, I know you're... Type, Bhandari snapped, not even looking at him. You think talking to you is a promotion? This is my cafe, my rules. Aarohi took off the apron with trembling fingers. Her hands felt like they didn't belong to her. She handed it over. Trying not to cry. Pride can taste bitter when swallowed too often. I'm sorry, she whispered, not to Bhandari, not to Sundar, to herself. For believing that maybe, just maybe, her life was about to change, she walked out into the street, feet splashing in puddles that hadn't yet dried from last night's rain. Behind her, Sundar watched, quiet, thoughtful, and suddenly very interested. What he didn't say was that he was in India for a reason. A quiet trip. No cameras, no handlers. Just him, searching for something he couldn't quite name. And now he had found it. He stepped out of the cafe, his eyes scanning the crowd, but she was already gone. Aarohi single quotes, his heart was racing. Her eyes burned, not from the rain, from the shame. She thought she'd made a mistake, wasted her chance. Again, she didn't know yet. That the man she served chai to was going to change her life. But first, she had to face something worse than being fired, going home, and telling her family the truth. And she had no idea, that her phone was about to ring. And when it did, her whole world would tilt. The call that wasn't meant for her rain fell again that night, not in thunder or storms, but in soft, steady taps against the broken window pane of the small one-room flat Aero he called home. She sat cross-legged on the thin mattress in the corner, staring at her hands like they belonged to someone else. Hands that had once written code, drawn algorithms on paper scraps, built tiny apps on borrowed computers. Now they only trembled. It's not from cold, but from the weight of another lost day. She hadn't told her mother yet, or her brother. She didn't have the strength to see that look, half worry, half disappointment dash again. She replayed the morning over and over in her head. Not just the firing, but the conversation. The way the man, whoever he was, had listened, really listened, no interrupting, no judgment, just curiosity. It had felt like warmth on a cold day, but it didn't matter now. Maybe he had meant well. But intentions don't pay bills. Her phone buzzed suddenly, just once. A notification. She almost ignored it. But habit made her check unknown number, no name. Just a message. Are you free tomorrow at 10 a.m.? I'd like to talk. Sass stared at it, confused. No context, no clue. For a moment, she thought it might be spam. But then, that letter S. Her mind clicked back to the cafe, to the kind man with kind eyes who had asked about her dreams. Could it be? Her thumb hovered over the reply box, her breath shallow. Who is this? 3 dots appeared almost instantly, typing the man you serve chai to. I'd like to meet again, somewhere quieter. It's about work. Work. That word hit, like a lightning bolt. Not hope yet, but something close to it. She didn't respond immediately. She paced the room. Her bare feet made soft thuds against the cracked tile. Could this be real? Or was this just life playing another trick on her? The next morning, she wore her cleanest kurti, still faded, still worn, but ironed carefully with a borrowed press from the neighbor upstairs. Her mother raised an eyebrow. When she left without her apron, or her usual grumble about long shifts, Interview Aarohi said quickly. Not quite a lie, not quite the truth. The address he sent her wasn't fancy, just a small cafe tucked behind a row of bookstores in Fort. Old wood tables, college students murmuring over laptops, a cat sleeping. On a windowsill, it was the kind of place where ideas hung in the air waiting to be caught. Sundar was already there, wearing the same simple shirt. Sipping his tea like he had all the time in the world, he smiled as she approached. You came, she nodded, still cautious. You didn't really give me a reason not to. I hoped the word work might do it, he said, gesturing to the seat opposite him. She sat down. No menu. No waiter came over. Somehow the cafe understood this wasn't a customer conversation. So, she began slowly, Who are you? Really? He chuckled, setting down his cup. You ever Google a recipe? And the article starts with someone's life story? All the time, she said, surprised into a small smile. Well, he continued, you're about to get mine, he told her everything. Not in a bragging way, but in a quiet, humble flow that didn't need to prove itself. How he'd grown up in Chennai, studied in the US, how he'd once been the kid who couldn't afford a calculator and now oversaw the people, building the most powerful computers on Earth. How he still remembered the feel of a ration card in his pocket. aarohi, his mind swirled. She couldn't believe it. Sundar Pichai, the CEO of that company. And he was here, talking to her. Why me? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. Because you listened, he said simply, and then you spoke. Most people don't do both. Her throat tightened. I was fired. And that's the second reason, he said, his expression turning serious. You lost something by helping a stranger. It tells me who you are. She couldn't speak. Words tried to come, but they crashed into each other in her throat. I'm building a small initiative, he went on. Quietly. For now. It's a scholarship and mentorship program for women in tech across India. But not just for students. It's for fighters. People who got knocked down and kept coding anyway. And I want you to be the first. Aarohi blinked. Me you, he said. But only if you're ready to learn again. It won't be easy. You'll be working with people from everywhere.
How?
Deadlines, interviews, test projects. And you'll still have to prove yourself. No favors. Just opportunity. No, when the tears started, they just came. Not loud, not dramatic. Just slow, quiet rivers of disbelief and relief. For the first time in what felt like years, someone had not only seen her, but believed in her. He handed her a folder. Inside was a laptop voucher, a learning roadmap, and a letter of recommendation that bore his full name. She looked up at him. Why are you doing this? He sipped his tea again, eyes soft. 'Cause someone once did it for me. Maybe because I think the world needs to see what you can build. Aarohi left the cafe with her hands trembling for a very different reason this time. She walked like the street beneath her had shifted, like she was lighter, taller, like the world had cracked. Opened just wide enough to let her slip through into something better. But fate, as always, wasn't done testing her yet, because that evening, she returned home, folder clutched to her chest like a lifeline. She found her mother waiting at the door, face pale. The school called, she said, aarohi. I froze. What happened?
Right.
Mother swallowed hard. Your brother. He didn't come home today. The folder slipped from her fingers. Missing doesn't mean lost to vanning in Mumbai, doesn't whisper like it does in smaller towns. It crashes in. Horns blaring, streetlights flickering, chai vendors screaming over one another. But for Aarohi, the noise had disappeared. The world was suddenly mute. Her mother's words echoed like a bell stuck inside her skull. Your brother. He didn't come home today. 3 hours. That's how long it had been since Viraj should have walked in through the creaky gate, kicked off his shoes like a small hurricane, and shouted about how unfair his chemistry teacher was. He wasn't the kind of boy who vanished. He was the kind who left snack wrappers in every corner of the house and wore mismatched socks like a badge of rebellion. Not the type to disappear. She rushed back out before her mother could even finish. The sentence? The folder with the scholarship papers lay forgotten on the floor, its edges slowly curling like a page of a book no one finished reading. She ran down the street, past the old pan shop, past the barber who always nodded at her, past the neighborhood auntie who was mid-gossip and froze mid-sentence when she saw Aarohi's face. First stop. The school locked, a bored security guard. Looked up from his phone and shrugged when she begged for answers. Last bus left hours ago, he said. Maybe he went to a friend's place. He doesn't have friends, she snapped. Too fast, too raw. The guard raised an eyebrow but said nothing more. Next stop, the bus stand. The usual crowd was still there, the newspaper uncle, the bored college girls, the man who always played budgeons too loudly through his speaker. She asked them all. Nothing. No one had seen Ver. Her legs ached, but she kept walking. Block after block, street after street. She checked the nearby internet cafe. Nothing. The video game parlor 3 alleys down, dark and empty. She even asked the group of teenagers who usually loitered near the temple steps, pretending to study. No one had seen him. The sky started to rumble above, as if the clouds themselves were worried. And then, just when her panic reached the kind of fever pitch where breathing became optional. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number, just like yesterday. But this time, no polite message, no invitation. Just 3 words. He's with us. No punctuation. No explanation. Her stomach dropped. Felt like her body had turned into a tunnel, and the words were falling straight through it. She tried calling the number back. Disconnected. Her hands were shaking so badly, she nearly dropped the phone. Her breath came in sharp bursts, as if her lungs had forgotten how to behave under pressure. She went home somehow. How she wouldn't remember later. Her mother was waiting at the door, her eyes wild and teary. "Did you find him?" Aarohi didn't answer. She just showed her the message. They didn't sleep that night. They sat on the floor, side by side, holding hands like they used to when she was little and scared of thunder. Except now the thunder was inside her. By morning, her eyes were raw and red and her thoughts were tangled. But one thing was clear. She needed help. Not from the police. Not yet. She didn't trust them to understand. Not when they had dismissed other girls who came from her neighborhood, brushed off their fears like dust. This wasn't a random kidnapping. It felt personal. She opened her phone and stared at the name in her messages. It felt crazy. What could Sundar Pichai do? But then again, he had said something yesterday. You'll be working with people from everywhere. Maybe one of those people knew something, had access. Tools? She didn't know. But she had no other door left to knock on. She messaged him. "I need your help. This is not about me. It's about my brother. He's missing." Someone sent a message. "I don't know what to do," he replied in under a minute. "Where are you? Stay there. I'll call." And he did. His voice was calm, but not cold. Gentle, but firm. "Don't worry," he said. "I have friends. The kind who know how to find shadows. You believe me?" she asked. "I don't need to believe. I just need to help." It was a strange sentence. And yet exactly what she needed to hear within the hour. She was connected to a man named Raj, who spoke like he had swallowed a satellite. Short, clipped words, precise questions. He asked for details, phone numbers, timings, even the bus route Viraj usually took. Then, he asked her to send a copy of the message, and don't talk to anyone else about this yet, he added, especially not online. Why? Because whoever sent that message didn't want to hurt him. She frowned. "How do you know?" "'Cause they didn't ask for money, not yet." His voice hung in the air like fog. That evening, another message arrived. No number again, just a file. Video. With trembling hands, Aarohi opened it. The footage was grainy, like it had been recorded with an old camera. Viraj sat in a small room, not tied up, not crying, just ... confused, maybe scared, but alive. He looked at the camera and said softly, "Diddy, I'm okay. They said they won't hurt me. They just want to talk to you. Only you, please. Don't be scared." The video ended there. Aarohi stared at the screen, heart thudding like a hammer against her ribs. No demands. Just a message. This wasn't a kidnapping. This was a message. And she was the target. But why?
What had she
done? Or who had she helped? That made someone want to use her little brother as a pawn. A knock sounded at the door. Gentle, rhythmic. Her mother froze. Aarohi. I walked over. Slowly, every nerve in her body bracing for the worst, she opened it. A stranger stood there, tall, rain-drenched, clean clothes, but tired eyes. He smiled. "You don't know me," he said quietly, "but I know who you helped. And now they're trying to punish you for it." "Who's they?" she asked. He looked over his shoulder, then back at her. "People who don't want Sundar Pichai lifting. Girls like you into rooms you were never supposed to enter." Aarohi felt something cold curl inside her. What do they want? She whispered. To scare you? Maybe silence you. But you can't let them. Why? His answer came without hesitation. Because someone like you becoming successful, terrifies them. Some ceilings don't crack. They shattered, stranger. Didn't wait for an invitation. He stepped inside the moment Aarohi moved back, like he knew hesitation would close the door. He was soaked to the bone, but there was no urgency in his steps, just control. Like he'd been through storms before and knew they didn't last forever, he introduced himself only as Dev. No last name, no card, just a firm look in his eyes and a quiet confidence that wrapped around his words like wire. They've been watching you, he said, standing in their small kitchen like it was a war room. Ever since that morning at the café, Aarohi tried to steady her breathing. Watching me? Why? I'm nobody. Dev tilted his head. That's the problem. You're not. Not anymore. Not since Sundar spoke to you. You have something now. What? He pointed at her. Success. She sat down slowly, her body still carrying the weight of too little sleep and too much fear. Her mother hovered in the doorway, clutching a prayer book without turning the pages. Silence had taken up residence in the room. Dev continued. You've been chosen for a program that gives you more than education. It gives you connections, mentorship, visibility. Most people don't care, but some do. Especially those who've spent years building walls to keep girls like you on the outside. Aarohi's throat tightened. And they took my brother because of it. Dev nodded. They want to test you, if you'll give up before you even begin. They think pressure makes people break. She clenched her fists. They've never met me. I made Dev smile. Just a little. Good. You're going to need that fire. We told her everything. About the group that had been quietly working to dismantle opportunities for underrepresented talent in tech, not with violence, but with whispers, rumors, background checks that never cleared, applications that went missing. They operated in the shadows, always 3 steps ahead, feeding off fear and silence. And now they had her brother. He's safe. Dev assured her. We're watching them too. You'll get him back. But not by begging. Aarohi stood up. Then how? By showing them you can't be controlled? The words hit like electricity. Her entire life, she had been asked to keep her head down, to smile, serve, endure. And now, someone was telling her to rise. Not gently, not cautiously, but defiantly. She looked at the folder Sundar had given her, still lying where she'd dropped it. For the first time, it didn't look like paper, it looked like armor. What do I do next? She asked. Dev's voice dropped to a near whisper. You start your training like nothing happened? You attend every online session? You complete every task? And when they realize they couldn't stop you, they'll start to panic. When we move, so she did. The next morning, Aarohi logged into her first mentorship session from a borrowed laptop at the neighbor's house, her own system not yet delivered. There were 12 women in the virtual room. One from Delhi, one from Goa, another from a village she'd never heard of. They looked nervous, excited, unsure, just like her. Her mentor's face appeared. A woman named Lena, with sharp glasses, and a sharper tone. Welcome, Lena said. This isn't school. We're not here to babysit you. You'll learn fast, or you'll fall behind. Aarohi didn't fall behind, in fact, she soared. Line by line, code by code, she remembered the girl she used to be. The one who used to scribble logic puzzles on the backs of receipts. The one who stayed up late to debug school projects while others slept. The fire returned, stronger, hotter, forged by grief and grit.
Oh.
But she didn't tell the others what was happening behind the scenes. No one knew her brother was still missing. No one knew that every time she looked into the screen, she was doing it not just for her future, but for his. Outside, Dev and a small team tracked the movements of the group who'd taken Viraj. They were smart. They didn't leave digital footprints. But one thing gave them away their arrogance, that they believed she'd quit. They thought threatening her family would send her running, but Aarohi was made of tougher threads. Then, one night, 6 days into the program, Everything changed. She was working late, practicing an API integration exercise Lena had assigned. When she received a new message, no number again, no name, just a short video. It was Viraj again, same room, same camera angle. But this time, it wasn't alone. Someone stepped into frame, a man in a black jacket, face shadowed. He placed a folder on the table in front of Viraj and spoke softly. His voice distorted through a filter. "Tell your sister she has one day to walk away from the program. One day, or the next video will be much harder to watch." The screen went black. Aarohi stared at the monitor. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, broken patterns. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply picked up her phone and called Dev. They sent another message. "What did they say?" he asked. "They gave me a choice. What are you going to do?" Her voice didn't waver. "Finish the next assignment." Dev didn't say anything for a few seconds. "Then you're going to change everything." "What?" "Just me," she said. US. Because Aarohi understood something now. This wasn't just about her. It wasn't even about her brother anymore. This was about every girl who had ever been told she wasn't enough. Every waitress who served tea while holding dreams in her back pocket. Every student who dropped out to care for her family. Coder who wrote brilliance by candlelight. She wasn't the threat. She was the beginning. And somewhere, far away, Sundar Pichai sat in a quiet room, reading a message that simply said, she didn't quit. Pressure makes diamonds, or it breaks everything. The sun rose late the next morning, as if even it wasn't ready for what the day had in store. Inside the tiny apartment, the light touched everything gently, the worn calendar, the rusting fan. The corner where Aarohi's mother sat silently repeating prayers under her breath, beads slipping through her fingers like grains of borrowed time. But Aarohi didn't notice the light. She hadn't slept, hadn't blinked much either. Her eyes were locked on the screen, where lines of code glowed like runes. Her hands moved with a quiet fury, precise, focused, because today wasn't about passing a test. It was about sending a message back. Outside her mind, the city moved on. Cars honked, children shouted, the milkman argued with the security guard. But inside her world, everything had narrowed down to a single word: control. They thought they could take it from her, steal her rhythm, shake her enough that she'd stumble off the path she had barely begun walking. But every threat they sent only carved her resolve deeper into the stone of her heart. The fear was still there, sharp and electric, but it had nowhere to go now. She had turned it into focus. That morning, her final project brief arrived from the mentorship program. Not a practice run, not a soft trial, the real thing. They called it the Bridge Project. Build an application that solved a real-world problem using live data, security protocols, and scalable architecture. In other words, build something real, something that works, something that matters. Most of the other students panicked. Group chats exploded with anxious questions, memes, screenshots, theories. But Aarohi didn't say much. Her plan was already forming. She would build an app that did what the system failed to do for people. Like her brother track missing individuals. In real time, using a network of local community reporters and neighborhood volunteers, bypassing slow police bureaucracy. Maybe too ambitious. But ambition was all she had left. She called it Trace. The first night she worked on it, she hardly touched her tea. By the second night, she forgot to eat. Her mother tried to get her to sleep, but she waved her off with a quiet, distracted nod. Dev checked in twice a day, always brief, always asking the same two things. Any new messages? Any suspicious activity near the house? Not yet, she'd reply, but they're watching. I can feel it. The weird thing was, she was right. They were watching because 2 blocks away, in a black van parked behind a broken billboard, a man stared at a monitor that showed her laptop screen mirrored in real time. They had planted spyware weeks ago, thinking they'd catch her cracking, crying, begging. But what they saw instead was code. Relentless, elegant, brilliant code. She's not stopping. One of them muttered. The man beside him, older, bitter, clenched his jaw. Then we'll make her stop. But before they could make their next move, Aarohi made hers. On the third night, something strange happened. She received a message not from the unknown number, not from Dev, not from Sundar. Girl's name, no profile picture, just a message. I know where your brother is. Meet me. Alone. She stared at the screen. Her first instinct was to ignore it. Trap. Obvious. Textbook mistake. But the name rang a bell. She went through her old texts years ago. A name buried in a group chat from her college tech club, Mira. Quiet girl. Top coder. Disappeared during the third semester after some scandal involving stolen code and threats. No one proved data. R replied. How do I know this isn't a trap? The reply came fast. 'Cause I was you once, and I ran. Shouldn't. Her heart kicked against her ribs. After forwarding the chat to Dev, she slipped out of the house quietly, saying only that she needed air. She met Mira near the edge of the city at a rundown cyber cafe with more broken keyboards than working ones. Mira looked tired, older than she should have. Like life had given her hard lessons too early. Your brother's being held in an old factory site, she whispered, near the train yard. You're not hurting him yet. They're using him as leverage to make you drop out. Same thing they did to me. Except back then, no one helped. Aarohi's throat tightened. Why are you helping me now? It's because you didn't run. Because someone finally scared them enough to start using children as shields. Sundar. Mira nodded. He's opening too many doors. They've spent years building locks. Now girls like you are stepping in with keys. Aarohi's hands curled into fists. I'm not stopping. Mira smirked. I know. That's why I'm here. By the time Aarohi returned home, she already had a plan in motion. She shared the location with Dev's team. They confirmed it. 2 hours later, Viraj was extracted quietly, cleanly. No noise, no drama. He came home shaken, but unharmed. His first words? Didi, your app. It works. It found me. She laughed, and this time, it wasn't a tired laugh. It was loud, alive, like the sun had finally found a crack to burst through. But her story wasn't done. Her app went live in beta the next day. Sundar saw the code, so did Lena. They didn't say much at first, just quiet nods, till Lena sent her a private message. This isn't just a good project, it's revolutionary. And then an email came. Simple, professional, but it changed everything. Subject. We'd like to offer you a 6-month placement with our innovation team in California. Expenses covered, housing included. Start date, optional but recommended immediately. AAROH, I read it 3 times before the words stopped floating. Her mother cried when she told her. Cried and prayed and laughed all at once, like her heart. Didn't know what emotion to pick. Viraj just hugged her and whispered, you didn't break. She didn't, but in some faraway office someone else did, because Aarohi's name was trending. Her app was being downloaded, her articles were being written, and the very group that tried to silence her was now facing questions. Who were they? Long had they been stopping progress? Investigations were starting, files being opened, curtains lifting. As for Aarohi, she packed her bag, but before she left for the airport, she made one stop. Back to the cafe, the one where it had all started. Table 4. She stood outside. It was empty now. Dusty. Closed permanently. Bhandari's sign was gone. But she placed a small note under the shutter anyway. It read, "Thank you for firing me. It helped me find everything." Her name lit up the scythe plane, cut through the sky like a silver arrow, slicing clouds, distance, and doubt. Somewhere over the Atlantic, Aarohi sat by the window, watching the world curl beneath her like a sleeping beast. A few years ago, she wouldn't have dared dream this far. Even her wildest hopes had ceilings, not because she didn't believe in herself, but because the world around her had always whispered the same thing, girls like you don't fly, they serve the ones who do. But now, here she was. 25,000 feet in the air, her laptop, humming softly beside her, her fingers tracing the edge of the boarding pass like it was a trophy. She didn't sleep on the flight, didn't even blink too long. Her mind was racing through lines of code, project goals, memories of her brother's voice, her mother's hands folded in prayer, and the message Sundar had sent just before she boarded. This is not the end. This is chapter 1. Welcome to the room. Don't knock, just build. California greeted her with cold air and big skies. The tech campus where she'd be working looked more like a dream than a real place. Clean buildings with glass walls, quiet gardens where ideas probably bloomed faster than flowers, and people walking around with coffees like they were carrying equations in their heads. Her team was small, sharp, kind. They didn't look down on her. They didn't look at her the way some others once did, as a miracle or a fluke or a diversity. Tick mark. They saw her for what she was, talented, prepared, and terrifyingly focused. The first week, she'd barely unpacked. Her room in the company housing still had sealed boxes. She spent her nights in the innovation lab, building on trace, polishing features, adding community layers, strengthening security. She didn't want to just impress them. She wanted to leave a dent they'd remember. On her third Friday there, something strange happened. She was called into a conference room. No agenda, just a quiet request from Lena, who was now working directly with Sundar again. Aarohi, Lena said, sipping her coffee like it was too hot for the truth she was about to spill. There's a summit next week, internal only. Top engineers, product leads, a few directors. Sundar wants you to present Trace. Aarohi froze. What? He thinks they need to hear your story. Not just the product, the path, the truth, all of it. She blinked slowly. You mean the kidnapping? The threats? Especially that part? Lena said. You didn't just build an app. You broke a pattern. I need to see what it takes. A week later, she stood in front of a room filled with the kind of minds that once made her nervous to even speak. People who built search engines, operating systems, and platforms that shaped the planet. They were all quiet, watching. A girl from a one-room flat in Mumbai stand in sneakers, and a Kurdian changed their definitions. She didn't use big words. She didn't flash credentials. She told the story simply. How a café became her classroom. How a stranger became her lifeline. How fear tried to bury her, and she built something from inside that darkness. When she showed the statistics how, Trace had already helped locate 19 missing persons within 2 months. All through local networks and simple tools no one spoke for a long time. Then someone stood up. A senior executive. We want to scale this, he said. Not just support it. We want to make this global. She felt her knees wobble. Not from fear, from disbelief that had finally given way to truth. Over the next 3 months, everything accelerated. Trace became a funded division. Aarohi was made its youngest product lead. New teams formed under her. Young developers from villages, from small towns, from community centers across the world joined. Not because she was a charity case, but because she had proven what was possible. But the world wasn't done throwing surprises. On her 4th month in California, she received an invitation, a real one. Gold letters on black card, Women in Tech. Global Awards keynote speaker Aarohi Deshmukh. She laughed out loud when she saw it. It's the kind of laugh that comes when the universe does something so ridiculous, so poetic you can't help but grin. She flew to New York, wore a simple sari, walked into a room full of spotlights and applause, and forgot to feel small. Her speech wasn't polished. It was honest. I didn't get here because someone opened a door, she said into the mic. I got here because someone believed I could build my own, and I did. With tea-stained hands, a second-hand laptop, and code written at midnight. Crowd gave her a standing ovation. But more than that, more than the flashing cameras and interviews and social media trends, came something far quieter, far deeper after the event. A girl no older than 16 approached her, trembling, eyes wide. I'm learning Python, she said. From your videos, Aarohi tilted her head. I made videos. The girl nodded quickly. Your team uploaded them. Tutorials. With your voice. You said you don't need English to code. You just need courage. Aarohi smiled. Something in her chest warmed. Like home. Back in Mumbai, the old cafe space was turned into a free tech lab for girls. Sundar funded it quietly through a new initiative called Chai and Code, inspired by Table 4. They hung a picture of Aarohi near the doorknob, glamorous, not photoshopped. Just her mid-laugh, holding a cup of chai, captioned in small letters. She stayed curious. They couldn't stop her, and on the wall next to it in bold painted script. If you ever feel small, remember size has nothing to do with impact. aarohi. I never forgot where it began. She never stopped writing code. And she never stopped looking. For the next girl carrying a dream in her pocket and fear in her shoes, because now it was her turn to be someone else's Sundar. And so, the girl who once wiped tables, now shaped futures, not because she was lucky, but because someone tried to break her and she built something instead. The end.